Hey, I'm Alex Radcliffe from Board Game Co, and today I'm reviewing An Age Contrived, Folklore and Pilgrimage. This is an expansion to An Age Contrived from Bellows Intent, a game that delivered last year, a Euro game all about building up your tableau, managing your energy and your actions as you place out monuments across the board. That is a drastic oversimplification of what An Age Contrived is doing, but also it is a kind of hard game to summarize in a short time frame. It's something I struggled with in my last review, and it's something that I'm not even going to be trying to do in this review for the expansion. To that end, if you're diving to this for the first time, if you already know about An Age Contrived, great, you can go ahead and skip to my thoughts on the expansion, what it adds, and my thoughts on that. There'll be a timestamp down below. If you are new to this, you can go ahead and check out my review on the game. Again, it does not make for a great how to play. This is not the most intuitive game to teach and give a short overview on, which was one of my complaints about it. But if you do want my kind of short general thoughts just to summarize my review of the base game, in general, I believe An Age Contrived is an incredibly mechanically satisfying puzzle, a Euro game of managing your tableau, getting more powerful as you go, and trying to find the right combination of actions and, well, everything you do as you try to build up monuments and score points in a variety of different ways. That's the good part. I think it's incredibly mechanically satisfying. It is very rewarding once you get past the hurdles. The bad part of the game is there are hurdles. The game is hard to teach, it's hard to set up, and that gets harder, that's expansion thoughts, we'll come back to that. The game is hard to teach, it's hard to set up. The game, to me, the theme doesn't come through in the mechanics of the game. It feels almost themeless and like a hodgepodge of different mechanics that happen to work well with a final game at the end of it, but it certainly can feel like a mess at times as you go through it. Again, to be very clear, I think the end result is a very mechanically satisfying game that you might well enjoy, or I enjoy a lot, and I think you will if you can power past the hurdles in the way, because there are hurdles in the way. Additionally, I'll note one thing I did not say in my original review that I should probably say now because it's something that became more of an issue as I dove back into it, is that the iconography in this game, while I understand why it is the way it is, I mean there's only so much you can do with a limited amount of space, I find the iconography in this game is near useless. You are frequently checking your player aids. To be fair, they have great player aids, but you're frequently checking your player aids in the rulebook to see what different things mean. It's not one of those things you can dive into after having not played it for a year and be like, that means that. You will be relearning most of the icons again. So the iconography is necessary, and I don't really have a better solution, but it's not the most intuitive. So kind of the end result of An Age Contrived, and I gave this a 4 out of 5 by the way, and it's a rating I stand by with the caveat that if you bounce off this, I completely understand why. This is a game that, to me, getting several plays in my belt is part of what contributed to where I ended up with it, because there is somewhat to power through, but the end result is an incredibly satisfying game, just one with hurdles along the way. That's my kind of revised summary of An Age Contrived. As far as the expansion, An Age Contrived, Folklore and Pilgrimage, what does this expansion add? I'm going to be focusing on the three main things. There's like additional side stuff, there's like, revised player aids actually to cover certain things, certain misunderstandings, there's like doubling tiles, there's all these like side things, but the main three things are 2 new characters, and then Folklore and Pilgrimage, the 2 expansion modules. And to that end, I'll talk about what each of those adds, as well as my thoughts on those. The 2 new characters are just nice to have. I don't think you necessarily need them. The base characters are all very satisfying already. The characters add a high level of asymmetry to the experience you'll be playing through, but I do like the new base characters, particularly Kronari. I very much enjoyed. He has a level 3 ability that involves like tearing down a monument and building up another. He's all about messing with time, I guess, thematically speaking. His second ability is about managing where you slide in tiles on your player board. Again, none of this will make sense to you unless you've played through the game, but his second ability, I guess, to kind of distill it, allows you to manage where things go on your player board out of sequence the way the normal players have to utilize, which can be very strong and gives you a lot of room to play with things. And then his final ability I have the most fun with, which involves tearing down monuments in order to build up others, which gives you a lot of control over the things you can do and the benefits you can gain and how to spend your energy as you go through the game, and more importantly, it just feels game-breaking as you go through it. So both characters, Valimod and Kronari, are both nice. I think I'm pronouncing them correctly, but both of them are nice. Kronari in particular, I thoroughly enjoyed. Again, these aren't essential. They're just new characters with new abilities. I already like the base game characters. There's just more to like on these new characters. So it's an easy, hey, enjoy the variety. They're good, they're fun, and definitely play Kronari if you have a chance. sense. As far as the expansion modules, there are two. There's going to be Folklore and Pilgrimage. Folklore is all about trying to make your board movement matter more. As you move around the board, you're going to have the opportunity to drop artifacts and then take cards from your Pilgrimage, from your folklore cards. I constantly mix up the expansion names. From your folklore cards over here, you'll have the opportunity to go ahead and choose an ability on your cards to carry out as you move around the board. That on its own isn't the main reason I like this. The main reason I like it is as other players go to where your artifacts are, they have the opportunity to do the same thing, but now, because of something already there, they get to do two abilities on their card, and you're like, hey, wait a second, I was there first. Don't worry, you get to go back to your card and do another ability on that card. And so effectively what you have is you have this kind of opportunity in the game where movement around the board matters more. Your presence on the board matters more. And this is particularly relevant because one of my complaints around the base game was the fact that I felt that the movement on the board mattered a little bit, but not nearly as much as you might think. In fact, one of the revisions to the player aids was that, and this is something I called out in my original review, is I said it's very non-thematic to me, the fact that you can build monuments from anywhere, despite the fact that your characters are wandering around this region, you can build a monument over there in that region. I should know, by the way, this is like a hodgepodge of stuff. Do not take this as a setup of the game. But as you move around the board in different ways, you'll have the opportunity to build anywhere you want as far as the monuments go. There are reasons and times, particularly like these bridges you'll be building, why certain areas of the board do matter, but it doesn't matter as much as I like. And apparently it's one of the things that was commonly misunderstood, which is part of the reason for the revised player aid. Again, I feel it's a thematic disconnect from how the game operates. That said, this Folklore expansion gives you a reason to care more about the board. Caring where your opponent's artifacts are so you can take advantage of them gives you a reason to care about the board where it is, and a reason to go to certain areas to get more advantages on this. I will say in particular, and again this goes back to something I said in my base game review, where I do think this game operates best at 3 or more players. I think at 2 players there's just less monuments to engage with and there's less interaction, and particularly with this module as well, it's less, I guess, beneficial if you're just trading benefits with one player as opposed to if you're trying to constantly go everywhere, because if you and I benefit and they don't, that's a better bump up, if that makes sense. It's less net neutral, net zero, what's the term? I'm forgetting the term for it, but it basically helps if some players are benefiting but not all, if that makes sense. But yeah, this module over here, the Folklore module, I would never play without it. I would never play without it even with new players. It is easy to teach. It is easy to add on to the game. There's going to be that iconography aspect of just having to learn more things there. But past that, it works perfectly with the base game, and I would never play without it with both experienced players and new players alike. So I'm a big fan of the Folklore module and really recommend that it adds to your overall experience as well as the reason to care more about where you are on the board. The Pilgrimage model I was less enamored with, unfortunately. It's going to have you moving up this sideboard over here, where you're going to be building structures on this board while trying to get various benefits. It gives you effectively another place to put your energy in the game. It's another place to direct your energy, to build these structures, to move up the path, to gain benefits, and hopefully eventually make your way to the top, where you can go ahead and get a bunch of extra points for getting there while having gained all these benefits along the way. And there's nothing wrong with the Pilgrimage model. To be very clear, it's not that it's bad in any way. To me, it's hard to really distill my thoughts on this properly. I'd say that the problem is the best way to distill it is almost a comparison to another game I've covered, which I'll cover soon, but before I get there, ultimately, I think for me, it gives you another thing to do with your energy, another action, another thing to be mindful of, but I think it just splits my focus more in the game. It's the kind of thing that I think might be more helpful or beneficial if you're someone who's playing this game a lot and you just want that level of additional choice. And I find a lot of expansions to different games do that in different ways. And I think I'm going to give you 2 comparisons specifically, which may or may not help, but specifically the 2 games that came to mind when I was thinking of how the Pilgrimage model kind of interacts with the core experience is going to be the Castles of Burgundy as well as Marrakesh. 2 different Stefan Feld games, one of which I thoroughly enjoyed the sideboard add-on and one less so. You see, Marrakesh has the Camels expansion. It's a little bit of a racetrack where it gives you an extra way to just spend the resources you're gaining. So the base game already gives you all these ways to do things, and it's like, here's this one more thing that's a kind of sidetrack that loosely incorporates with the rest of the game, but just as another thing you can do. And in Marrakesh, I didn't love the Camels sideboard. Maybe Nomads, I don't remember. I think it's the Camels and whatnot. But I didn't love the Camels sideboard. It's nothing wrong with it. I just liked the base game plenty, and the way it interacted with the rest of the experience wasn't beneficial enough for me to feel that I was rewarded for playing it. And when I play Marrakesh, I don't feel the need to play with that Camel sideboard anymore. Contrast with the Castle of Burgundy. The Castle of Burgundy, the Vineyard expansion, does the exact same thing. It gives you a whole new sideboard of where you can go ahead and just spend your resources in a whole new way. But the way the Vineyard sideboard interacts with the rest of the game, to me, is thoroughly enjoyable, and while it's not something I pull up out with new players, it is something that I think really adds to the level of the experience, and it's something I regularly will pull out with experienced players because it gives you another puzzle to solve as far as the way it interacts with the base game. And what's particularly relevant about those examples is I play the Castle of Burgundy a ton, and I play Marrakesh far less frequently, and I wonder if that's the distinction. I wonder if it's either because it might be about how well something incorporates into a base experience, or it might be about my own personal level of familiarity with that base experience and how much I personally benefit from it. And that's true here as well. An Age Contrived is a game that I play far less often than the Castle of Burgundy. It's more similar to Marrakesh. It's a game I'll pull out infrequently. It gives you a nice little Euro experience, but it's not one that I am thoroughly familiar with and having seen all the ins and outs or anywhere close to it for the game. And so for me, the Pilgrimage model feels almost more like a distraction from the core experience. Again, there's nothing wrong with it. I think it's good. I just think for me personally, I'm not at a place where I would frequently pull that out, either with my regular game group or with new players, because I'd rather just play the base experience. And the reason I spend so much time on giving these examples and comparisons is because frankly, I don't know whether it's something that I don't, again, with all three of those games, with Age Contrived, Castle of Burgundy, and Marrakesh, I don't know which of those are because of my familiarity and which of them are just because whether the incorporations are done better, if that makes sense. So again, my kind of summary of the Pilgrimage module is it adds more to the setup time because I hate putting those little metal tokens and playing the rapid flip. Like when you set up these games and the metal tokens underneath these boards, you're kind of playing a rapid flip kind of situation, which is annoying to do, and the Pilgrimage just adds more to it. It's not the end of the world, it's just not something I do in most games, so it stands out more here. But it adds more rules overhead, and again, I think the Folklore is very, very easily incorporated. I think Pilgrimage adds more rules overhead, more setup time, and doesn't overall improve my experience, so for me it's one that, at least for right now, I just wouldn't see myself tabling that expansion. Which brings us to final thoughts on An Age Contrived, Folklore, and Pilgrimage. And it's tricky because my thoughts are kind of divided up amongst the new things it adds. I think the new characters are great, they're not necessary, but it's a nice addition to the game. I think the Folklore expansion is an easy must-have expansion that I would always play with every single time, and the Pilgrimage expansion to me didn't really add much to the experience, but you may well get experience from it. For me, it just didn't do anything for me. And so for my overall final thoughts and rating on the expansion, I'm going to give it a 3.5 out of 5, although again, I want to emphasize that's because I'm kind of rating it as a bundled set. If I was rating just the Pilgrimage model, the Pilgrimage model would be an easily 4.5 out of 5, the new characters are another 4 out of 5, and the Pilgrimage is to me a 3 out of 5 at best. So I'm kind of averaging it to whatever it is to a, well, it's not really an average, it's a weighted average, I guess, to a 3.5 out of 5 as far as the expansion goes, but hopefully you're paying attention to the specific things I'm saying to get my more nuanced thoughts on each individual aspect of the game. Anyways, that is my review for An Age Contrived, Folklore, and Pilgrimage. It's one where if you've played through the base game, I think it's worth checking out and having on your radar, and just seeing which of those elements work for you or not. Oh, and I probably should have said this at the beginning, this is half a prototype. The base game is the final base game, the expansion elements are a prototype, rules, components, subjects change, and there'll be a link to the Kickstarter campaign down below. In any case, and until next time, I'm Alex Radcliffe from Board Game Co. I hope you found this helpful, and as always, I hope you have a good one.